It has been a while since I did this show. Things got in the way and I end up forgetting about posting every day of October. As for now, this will be only an October show. The only way that it's more than a October show if I have more content to last longer than 31 days. If you watch my prediction show, you may have noticed I'm using the smoke effect in this video as well. I think it gives it a nice touch, don't you think? I hope to have some scary videos for this show. In the meantime. Well, anyways, here are some stories read by others. Also, these are not my own stories and the readers' voices have been altered to protect their identities. Now get ready and leave the lights off if you dare. The apartment.
My apartment is haunted. I'm 20 years old and live in a fairly small apartment complex. I live here with my husband and 2-year-old daughter. We've lived here for about a year and a half, and the weird stuff started about 8 months ago. In my apartment, there are 2 bedrooms, and in my daughter's room, there is a utility closet and a regular sliding door closet. In my room, one whole wall is basically a closet with 3 sliding doors. You may be wondering why I'm explaining closets. Well, this is because that's where all the creepiness started. One huge OCD tick of mine is closing doors. I cannot stand doors being open for no reason. So every door in my home is shut almost 24/7. Or so I thought. One day while I was visiting my cousin, who lives 1 apartment building over from me, for an all-day occasion, my daughter was gone with family for the weekend, and my husband was at work. Some odd stuff happened. My husband made it home first, and only went in for about 5 minutes to grab something out the kitchen and bring it over to my cousin's place. He verified that I indeed had closed every door while he got home. After sitting around and chatting with my cousin for a few more hours, we went home. Walking through my front door, I felt like something was off. It was pitch black, but I chalked it up to my husband shutting off the stove light, which in itself is still odd. Stumbling for the light switch, we find one of my daughter's toys placed in front of the light switch, where in the dark you could easily trip over it. This was sign too that something was off. I knew for a fact that it hadn't been there where I'd left earlier. I brushed it off and continued on getting settled in for the night. Later, while walking down the hall, I stopped dead in my tracks, 1/3 of the way down the hall, when I saw my daughter's bedroom door slightly ajar. Had my husband been in there? I could have sworn he was in the living room the entire time. But then I heard it. The closet door, her closet door, in the pitch black of her room, had slammed open. I stood frozen for a moment before slowly peeking around the corner of her door frame. Nothing. The door was closed, but something else catches my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I see it. A small light. A flashlight that had previously been in the bottom drawer of the kitchen. It sat in the center of my daughter's bed, with the light illuminating the corner behind her bed. I approached it slowly, and the moment my hand connected with the light, a button-operated toy began flashing behind me. You heard that right. This toy that you have to manually press buttons onto to turn on was flashing while I was cornered in my daughter's room. I felt my heart was just about to force its way up my throat. I couldn't breathe until, like a hero out of a movie, my husband walked in asking what I was doing, and I left the room quickly. A few nights later, my daughter is still out with family, and me and my husband are in bed. It's the middle of the night, and I'm having the weirdest dream. I dream that I'm lying awake in bed, and there is a dark shape in the darkest corner of my room. And it startles me awake, or so I think. I wake up in another dream with this tall, dark figure bent over my bed staring down at me. This time I'm jolted awake, and I'm trying to catch my breath. While I sit in the silent dark, my husband is sleeping, and I'm essentially alone. That's when I hear it. My closet door is shaking back and forth on the track, not like being blown by wind, but like someone is shoving it, trying to get out. At this point I'm in tears and shaking my husband awake, and the moment his eyes open it stops. I get frustrated and cry harder, because now I feel like I'm going crazy. But this entity obviously isn't done yet. Night after night of listening to toys coming on alone, and closets opening and closing, does it finally happen? I have this problem with my eyes called optic neuritis, which causes me to occasionally lose my eyesight when I stress out too much. The reason I tell you this is because the night my husband finally got to see what I was talking about was the night I lost my vision for a few days. We were in bed sometime at night, and it's quiet. I'm really good at detecting sound, since I'm basically blind every few months or so, when I hear a familiar click. I sat straight up in bed. Our hallway light is a twist light, so to turn it on you twist a little knob at the bottom, and it clicks when you twist it. At the same time, my husband jumps out of bed, because he sees the hall light flash on through the crack of the door. I'm panicking, but I know that he is finally going to understand what I've been suffering through. He opens the door, and from what he told me, every door in the house was wide open. After a long night of closing doors and tear-filled apologies, we finally pass out from exhaustion. My daughter comes home and is acting strange, talking to walls, sitting in her closet, and pointing at corners. This scares me, but my husband says it's normal kid stuff. And before bed, my daughter and I are in the living room, and she's using her potty chair when she points into the kitchen and says, "Push it off." And within seconds, a glass is flung from the counter at the wall and lands upright on the floor. I'm traumatized living in my apartment. One thing more happened yesterday when me and a friend were sitting in the living room with my daughter, and she gets up and runs to the open door. I assume my husband is home, because before she gets there the doorknob starts turning, like he's trying to unlock it. And the moment she unlocks it, the door starts to open but slams before she can pull it open. I'm confused at this point, and so is my friend, so I check the door and nobody is even near it. I live at the top of some stairs, so I'd hear someone running down the stairs if it was a joke. My daughter is visiting for holidays with family, and I'm alone. While I'm video chatting with my mother, she stops mid-sentence and says hi to my husband. I'm confused and think that she can see the confusion on my face, because she begins to look confused as well. I remind my mother that I'm alone, and she goes pale, explaining that she had just seen the shape of a person standing in the hall behind the couch where I was sitting. Moments later, after I walk through the house with an old pocket knife in hand, I find nothing. But now my mum and I, at the same time, ask, "Is that running water?" I look around trying to find the source of the sound, checking every bathroom. Not a drip. Then the sound sounds like it's coming from the kitchen. Nothing again. Frustrated, I stomp back to the bathroom, and my skin begins to crawl. The sink is on full blast. How? Confused yet again, I walk back into the living room, phone still in hand, talking to my mother, and the wall behind me that connects the living room and my daughter's room. There's a loud bang, like someone hit the apartment wall very hard. I spent an hour waiting outside my apartment on the phone with my mum, waiting for my husband to get home and survey it further before I entered.
That was interesting. I'm sure those who live in an apartment may want to see if any closed doors are now open. On to the next, shall we? The Man by the Lake.
This took place 10 years ago when I was a freshman in college. This is the first time I've ever recounted this story in full detail to anyone. I attended college in a rural mountain area in the Northeast, a small school tucked away in the rolling hills of the mountains, the type of place where the beauty and casual grace of nature is juxtaposed by the ugliness of humanity. The newspaper was ultra-conservative, and you couldn't go too deep into the woods beyond a few trees without seeing some trace of meth activity. You know the type of place I mean. Anyway, one of my new friends from college discovered somehow an abandoned train trestle deep into the woods about 5 miles from campus, basically in no man's land. I have no idea and don't remember how he found this place because it was very much off the path. The trestle crossed above a river which placidly flowed about 40 feet below. It was actually quite beautiful, and we began going there maybe 3 times a week. Just hanging out on the trestle, watching the water below and the open sky above. We'd drink 40s there, smoke a bowl there, bring some girls there, stuff like that. Eventually, we began jumping off the trestle into the water below and then climbing back up. It was just a very college-y thing to do. Our chill spot, basically. So, one day, just needing to get away from the dorms and away from it all, I decided to go by myself to the trestle for a swim. It was about 7 p.m., so I still had a good hour or so of dim sunlight, and I brought a flashlight for the walk home when I was sure it would be dark. I made the trek through the pathways of the woods as I had done 100 times before, left my towel and flashlight on the trestle and jumped into the water. The water was about 10 to 15 feet deep, I'd say. It flowed almost imperceptibly. You might as well be swimming in a stagnant pool. However, about maybe 50 yards away from the trestle, the river narrows and the current picks up significantly. Then about 20 yards after that, there is a maybe 20-foot high waterfall that bubbles and splashes with extreme violence. We used to watch large objects go over and never come back up again. So there I am, dimly bobbing my head in and out of the water, doing underwater flips, etc. When I popped my head out of the water, I happened to glance to the side of the river and see a man walking towards the water. The water is kind of impeding my view, so I don't see him fluidly walking towards the water. I more see him in different stages of being closer to the water, like flipping through a flip book. He's 15 feet away, 10 feet away, 5 feet away. I can barely give you a description. Maybe 6 feet tall, pale, skinny, black hair pulled back in a ponytail. What I do remember most about his appearance was the extremely empty look on his face and in his eyes. Like he was doing something mundane, like taking out the trash or raking leaves. I'm treading water, not knowing what to think, and I see that he is no longer beside the river. He dove in, and he's swimming pin straight directly at me so fast. I try to swim the opposite way, but within a minute I feel him grab my ankle and tug. I tried to scream, but water filled my mouth. While I'm underwater, he lets go and goes up for air, then grabs back on and pulls me again. It seems like he's done this before, and I never once saw him after he jumped into the water. He's gradually pulling me to where the current picks up before the waterfall. I start to realize this and just start fucking flipping out. I'm kicking, screaming, cursing to no effect. Finally, I feel the current start to take me and I twist away towards the waterfall. I look back and I see this fucking guy just casually swimming back to where he jumped into the water, not even looking at me. This is by far the scariest moment of my life as I approach the waterfall. Long story short, I go over and I'm underwater for a long time. Over a minute. The water above unrelentingly pushing me under. The only reason I survived was there was a large log that had gone over, and I grabbed it and used the leverage against the bottom to push me away from the crushing water. I survived, obviously. But then I had to trek the miles back to my dorm in the dark without my flashlight. Every step of the way thinking he would come back to finish the job. The next year, a football player drowned going over that fall. The news said it was because there was an extreme current due to the recent rainfall, but I've always wondered about that.
That story may not seem like a paranormal story, but what if the strange man wasn't a man at all? Have you thought about that? I believe we have time for one more. Don't want you up all night, or maybe just maybe I do. The last story is called The Call at School.
This happened in my freshman year of high school. I'm 20 now, and this is the first time I've thought about it in a while. I was in my third period class, the second to last period before the school day was over. I was in my literacy workshop class. The class was pretty small, probably about 10 to 12 kids other than myself. We were doing some type of activity as a class, so it was pretty loud. We were all having a pretty good time when the classroom phone rang. My teacher picked it up and immediately looked at me. After about 5 seconds, she said someone was on the phone wanting to speak to me. This caught me off guard, but I assumed it was one of my parents asking a question, but they usually would just text me. I got up, and the teacher handed me the phone and resumed what she was doing with the class. I put my ear to the phone and was about to say hello when the person on the other line interrupted me abruptly. I'm going to kill you, chop you up, put you in a bag, and throw your pieces in the back of my truck. He also began giving me my own personal info, like my address, phone number, and the street I live on. He told me what class I was currently in, and my teacher's name. I didn't have an opportunity to say anything before he just hung up. I didn't know who this person was. My teacher and classmates began to wonder what the person on the phone was saying to me, because I never said a word, and I'm sure my facial expression looked a little odd. The teacher asked if everything was okay, and I responded, "Yeah, everything's fine." At the end of class, I was going to tell my teacher what the person said, but I decided not to for some reason. I didn't think my teacher would take it seriously. All of this had me wondering, Who the hell was this person on the phone? How did he know all of this information? And why me? Why would he say these things to me? What did I do to him? I have never wronged anyone bad enough for them to feel this way. After basketball practice, as my friend's mom was driving me home, I didn't see anything too unusual. Since this happened in the winter, it was dark by the time we were driving home. At one point, I did notice a black pickup truck that drove away right as we pulled into my driveway, but I couldn't see the driver. I never told anyone what happened that day in class, and I never heard that man's voice or seen that black pickup truck ever again.
Was this some kind of twisted prank, or did this mystery man had second thoughts? You be the judge. Thank you for spending your time and listening to these stories. I found them on 3 YouTube channels: Mortis Media, Corpse Husband, and Being Scared. You may hear more stories from those channels during this month, as well as others. Come back, will you?